Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyachadeshtarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Pramanityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchkalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. So Srila Prabhupada just participated in the Sadhu Samaj in Bombay, and as we read, he basically mainly had the devotees do kirtan, and the people in the crowd were just completely overwhelmed. Completely overwhelmed. And then Prabhupada spoke for 5 minutes, but the impact was massive. People began crying in uncontrolled happiness. Never before had such a thing happened. Yes, okay, so now that program's finished, so about 25 newsmen came to a press conference on the 5th floor of Mr. Seksaria's residence. Seksaria? Prabhupada sat with his disciples on a large mattress and answered questions. And the devotees showed a film of the San Francisco Ratha Yatra. The reporters asked about New Vrindavan. They questioned the devotees. Why had they become sadhus? Why had they left their country? The next day the press was full of stories of Prabhupada and his movement. The Times of India picked up on a particular angle. U.S. millionaire's son seeks solace in Krishna society. The article told of Girirajas renouncing his father's wealth to join Prabhupada's movement. One newspaper quoted Giriraj, "My father works hard and earns fabulous money. He also fights with my mother. My sisters ran away from the house. Thus, in spite of material comforts, nobody is happy." Quoting Shamsundar, "My father is very rich, but he has to take sleeping tablets every night." And there were other articles. Soon, letters appeared in the letters column of the Times of India. Okay, this is from a letter. "As far as my knowledge goes, these foreign Hindus of the Hare Krishna movement cannot be equal to the native original Brahmins and Hindus. They will have to be relegated to the lower castes." It is significant to see one of the newly converted sadhus, Sri Gopal Das, formerly Charles Poland of Chicago, stated that he was a construction worker formerly. Doing Sudra's work, it would thus become necessary to allot the 3 lower castes to these foreign converts according to their profession. Haribol. Haribol. That's a real Haribol. Another letter stated, the Hare Krishna movement is just a sporadic fad of sentimentalists. Prabhupada said these letters should be answered. And he personally outlined replies, delegating their writing to specific disciples. Within a few days, Prabhupada's replies appeared in the press. Yes, this is... Now, what follows is Srila Prabhupada. You see, the way it's laid out here, you can't tell what's what. So Prabhupada replied, in India, even amongst the Brahmins in different provinces, there is no social intercourse. So if they're socially accepted or not doesn't matter. For example, amongst the qualified legal practitioners in different provinces, there may not be social intercourse, but that does not mean they're not qualified lawyers. This is a cultural movement. And if the whole world accepts this cult, even though Indian Brahmins do not accept it, will do no harm at all. We are not striving for social or political unity. But if Krishna consciousness is accepted, there will automatically be political, social, and religious unity. The fact that one of our boys was a construction worker does not mean that he belongs to the Sudra community. The Sudra community is the less intelligent class or illiterate class who have no information of the value of life. In America, even the highest cultured and educated person can go to work as an ordinary construction worker because they accept the dignity of labor. So although a boy was working as a construction worker in America, he is not a Sudra. But even if he is accepted as a Sudra, Lord Krishna says that anyone who comes to him is eligible to be elevated to the highest position of going back home, back to Godhead. In a letter signed by Giriraj, Prabhupada refuted the charge that his movement was a sporadic fad, quote unquote, sporadic fad of sentimentalists. And this is Prabhupada. How can our movement be sporadic when this science was taught in the Gita 5,000 years ago and instructed to the sun god millions of years before that? How can it be called sporadic when our activity is Sanatan Dharma, the eternal occupation of the living entity? Would faddists give up all meat-eating, intoxicants, illicit sex and gambling for over 5 years now? Would faddists give up friends, family and money and get up at 4 a.m. daily, ready to go to any country in the world and preach in any conditions immediately on the request of their spiritual master? Unquote. Prabhupada saw all news coverage of the Krishna consciousness movement as an aid to propagating Krishna consciousness. Even by criticizing the Krishna consciousness movement, he said, the papers were broadcasting the holy name of Krishna, and Krishna's name was absolute. Mr. Seksaria held a special program for many important dignitaries of Bombay. Although he had expected no more than 200 persons, many more came. They were Bombay's elite. The women dressed in expensive silk saris and wearing golden jewels. The men in silk Nehru-collared suits, all white, starched dhotis and kurtas. Prabhupada held kirtan with his disciples, and then he spoke briefly and gravely. You are all very intelligent persons, he said. You're all very learned and educated. You're all very great persons. I beg you, I take the straw of the street between my teeth, and I beg you, just chant Hare Krishna. Please chant Hare Krishna. After his talk, Prabhupada left, and the devotees showed slides of the Hare Krishna movement's activities around the world. They also made their first public life membership appeal. And Mr. G.D. Somani, one of India's leading industrialists, as well as Mr. Seksaria, signed on as members. Although Prabhupada was happy to see the number of ISKCON's life members increasing, that his shipment of books from Dai Nippon had not yet arrived made him anxious. The devotees were promising life members books, but where were these books? Every day the problem became more and more pronounced. Prabhupada learned of a Calcutta port strike. His books had apparently arrived, but the ship, unable to unload cargo in Calcutta, had left port. He worried that the ship would unload the books in some other Indian port. The exact whereabouts and condition of the books, however, remained unknown. Prabhupada was greatly concerned. He decided to send a competent disciple, Tamal Krishna, to Calcutta to try and retrieve the books. Meanwhile, he would continue preaching, depending on Krishna. Amritsar, October 21st, 1970. Accompanied by a group of disciples, 7 men and 2 women, Prabhupada began the 2-day train ride from Bombay to Amritsar. Years ago, Prabhupada had traveled as a preacher in India alone, riding the trains to Jhansi, Delhi, Kanpur, Calcutta and Bombay to publish Back to Godhead and solicit support. After only 5 years in the West, he now had the great advantage of sincere disciples, and now the Indians were taking notice. He had stationed Achyutananda Swami, Jayapataka Swami, Hansadutta, and others in Calcutta, Tamal Krishna, Shamsundar, and others in Bombay. His disciples would make life members and try to establish permanent ISKCON centers in 2 of India's major cities. His Krishna consciousness movement was beginning in India, and he wanted to travel with his disciples wherever there was an opportunity to preach, just as he had worked in America, never settling comfortably in one place, but always traveling, speaking about Krishna, meeting new people, and offering them devotional service. So he would also work in India. The train arrived at Kurukshetra station. Near here, said Prabhupada, Lord Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita 5,000 years ago. They say it does not exist, a mythological place. It is a symbol of the field of the body and the senses. Does that sound good? They say. It is an allegorical place. Sounds good? they say. But here we are at the station. As he spoke, the sun was setting, and a bright orange sky shone over the flat land. Excuse me. How can they say Kurukshetra is not a real place, he continued. Here it is before us, and it has been a historical place for a long, long time. When the train arrived at Amritsar station, members of the Vedanta Sammelan committee received Prabhupada and escorted him and his disciples to a park on the outskirts of the city. They showed him the large pandal the Niketan ashram had erected for the Vedanta Sammelan, and assigned him and his disciples their quarters, 3 small rooms. Prabhupada took one room, the 2 women the second room, and 4 of the men crowded into the third, leaving 3 men to sleep outdoors on cots. The first night in the northern climate was cold. Available bedding was meager, and none of the devotees had brought warm clothing. At 4 the next morning, the devotees congregated in Srila Prabhupada's room for Mangal Arati and Kirtan before the deities of Radha and Krishna, the same deities who had been traveling with Prabhupada for the past 1.5 years. Despite the austere conditions, the devotees felt fortunate to have such intimate contact with Prabhupada and Radha Krishna. Prabhupada played mridanga, leading the chanting of prayers to the spiritual master. Afterward, he had the pujari distribute to each devotee a bit of the fruit and sweetmeats that had just been offered to the deities. It was still before sunrise and the room was chilly. As the devotees sat huddled beneath a naked bulb, Prabhupada had them read aloud from Srimad Bhagavatam. That same morning, Prabhupada attended the Vedanta Sammelan. There were thousands of people in the audience. And since most of them did not understand English, Prabhupada spoke in Hindi. His presentation pleased everyone, and the committee members honored him by making him president of the Vedanta Sammelan. Although the program was scheduled only for several hours in the morning and evening, Prabhupada did not limit his preaching to these times. He preached every hour of the day. While he sat in his room, a constant stream of guests came to join him. Came to him. Hundreds of pious Hindus seeking his blessings. Recognizing this vestige of Vedic culture, vestige is really just very small, he pointed it out to his disciples. Just see, he said, how they treat a saintly person. Prabhupada also began receiving the usual flood of invitations to visit the homes of Hindu families. He accepted as many invitations as possible, more than possible, it seemed, to his disciples. Prabhupada moved quickly. When the cars were ready, he would come out of his room and go, leaving behind anyone who wasn't ready. After each engagement, he would get into his car and go directly to the next. Latecomers would sometimes find he had already left. They would then jump into bicycle rickshaws and try to catch him. A wrong direction or a missed turn might make them miss the next engagement. And when at last they would catch up, they would find Prabhupada coolly, gravely, in the midst of a lecture on Bhagavad Gita, or laughing and taking prasadam with his host. Every day brought at least a half dozen engagements. Come to our temple for darshan. Come to our house for prasadam. And whenever Prabhupada would return to his ashram, he would find a long line of guests waiting to spend a few moments with him. None of the devotees could match Prabhupada's pace and enthusiasm. His energy seemed never to wane. For his disciples, being invited insistently to take a full meal at half a dozen homes in one day was too much. I remember in Port Elizabeth with Indradyumna Maharaj and Shamlal Prabhu, we had to take prasadam in 3 houses in a row. And each house we chant Sarira Avichajal first. And the 3rd house we chanted Sarira Avichajal, but we couldn't finish it because we were just laughing just so much. Oh. Okay. They tended to overeat, and some of them got sick. But Prabhupada knew how to handle the situation expertly. He would fully satisfy each host, speak about Krishna consciousness, hold kirtan, take a little prasadam, and move on. One evening, in response to an invitation, Prabhupada visited the home of Baladev Indra Singh, a descendant of one of ancient Punjab's ruling families. Although nearly 60, Mr. Singh was still a robust Punjabi Kshatriya, handsome, tall, and sporting a big black moustache. He showed Prabhupada and his disciples through his elegant home, with its large portraits of ancestors, uniformed Kshatriyas with their helmets and swords. In the trophy room, which had many animal skins and stuffed heads mounted on the wall, Mr. Singh brought Prabhupada and his disciples before his prize trophy, a large tiger's head. Prabhupada approached closely. "You have killed this?" he asked. "Yes," Mr. Singh replied, and he described the details of the hunt. The man-eater had killed many people in a nearby village, Mr. Singh explained. "So I went and shot it." Prabhupada's eyes widened and he turned to his disciples. "Oh, very nice." Later, Prabhupada sat in a chair and Mr. Singh sat before him on the floor. He said something was troubling him. An astrologer had told him that in a previous lifetime, thousands of years ago, he had fought in the battle of Kurukshetra But on the side against Krishna, that's not possible, Prabhupada said. Everyone present at the Battle of Kurukshetra was liberated. If you'd actually been at the Battle of Kurukshetra, you would not still be within this material world. That's a great answer. Mr. Singh wasn't certain whether to feel relieved or disappointed. But Prabhupada assured him, that's all right, don't worry. Now you are a devotee of Krishna. When Prabhupada asked Mr. Singh to become a life member of ISKCON, he agreed immediately. He confessed that when he had first invited Prabhupada and his disciples, he had actually been skeptical. But after meeting with Prabhupada for a few minutes, he said, all his doubts and suspicions had vanished. He would be happy to become ISKCON's first life member in Amritsar. Although the devotees requested Prabhupada to take fewer engagements, he would not slow down. It was his disciples, he said, who were finding the pace difficult. One night, after the 8th and final engagement of the day, Prabhupada returned to his room just a little before midnight. For the devotees, the day had been exhausting, and they were eager to get to bed as soon as possible. Noticing Prabhupada's light still on, one of them went to the window. Prabhupada was sitting at his desk, leaning back against the wall, listening to a tape recording of one of the talks he had given that day. Well, yeah. Tribhuvanath Prabhu, I've mentioned his name, on a few different occasions before, because he was British. He was actually Irish, but, you wouldn't think he was Irish. He's like an Englishman, in a sense. But he was very close to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada really appreciated him a lot. And he told me that one day after class in Berry Place in London, before I joined, he went up to see Srila Prabhupada immediately after the class, just immediately. And Prabhupada was sitting reading Srimad Bhagavatam. And Tribhuvanath Prabhu said something to the effect, oh, Srila Prabhupada, you read your own books. And Prabhupada said, yes, of course. And do you know why? Because they are not my books. They're spoken by Krishna. Yeah. So I read them. Okay. So, devotees, let us conclude. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Oh, anyone, any comments?